Welcome back to our final day of our graffiti walls. Today we're kind of putting it all together. And then of course we got to show it off too in the Hall of Fame, so don't forget about that. So let's just kind of run through the steps so we know what we're doing, and then I'll demonstrate that as well. So first off, if you would like, you're going to use permanent marker to kind of sharpen any of those lines and edges. You don't have to do that step, but that's optional. Step 2, we're going to use a pencil or something similar to just carve a line into our styrofoam for our wall to kind of sit into. So we'll dry fit it first, meaning just make sure it fits in there when it's dry, then we'll add the glue line. And then of course I've been saying, over the last few days that go outside, find some rocks, some twigs, some, or it could be, if you're not going outside, it could be just stuff that you have already inside. Maybe you've got like a fake plant and you've asked permission to cut like a little piece off of it, or like from fish tanks or things like that where it's like the fake plants. That could work too. Once again, make sure you get permission though before you start cutting anything apart. And we'll just add that to the base, kind of like we see in the example picture over here, to give it that final touch. Okay, and then of course we'll upload it into the Hall of Fame. As a reminder, next week is going to be in Mrs. Seidel's room, so don't forget to click on her Zoom link for next week. All right, without further ado, let's switch on over our view. Here we go. So you can see I've got my styrofoam here ready to go. I have cut mine, but I'm going to show you guys how to cut it too. There's different options, but let's start with step number 1. So you can see I still have some work to do on this. I would not want to actually finalize everything until this was done, but I figured it's enough for the demonstration anyway. So we're just gonna go with that. So step number 1 was, if you would like, use your permanent marker to kind of sharpen any lines on your wall design. So in my example, it looked like this, and you can see those Sharpie marker lines. Maybe I want them everywhere, just like you see here. Cool. Maybe I decide though as I'm looking at it, maybe I'm like, oh, I want them on the letters, but I don't actually want it for like around the yellow, so you can feel free, like this is why we made an example like that, so we can see what we like and what we don't like, and then, we can choose only the things we love for the final. So I've got just a Sharpie marker here, permanent marker, and I'm gonna choose to just use it slowly, carefully on this. Now, you might have a different permanent marker. Yours might be thinner. I doubt that it's thicker. This guy's pretty big. But yeah, any permanent marker is going to work. I just wouldn't use like a watercolor marker, because that'll probably, rub off and not work quite as well. But yeah, so I would just go then and kind of sharpen up all of these lines. Once the painting was done, of course, as a reminder. Okay, so you can see what that would look like. I'm not going to make you watch me do this forever, because, once you see a little bit, you get the point. That's what you would do if you want to do that step 1. Okay? Step 2 has everything to do with our styrofoam, with our base. So you do not have to cut your base. You can see I did. I cut mine smaller. All I did was kind of measure how big is that, the fence, and I just wanted to make sure I had a little bit on either side before I cut it. So, I mean, you really honestly, if you've got like big enough scissors, you honestly, like, not the kid type ones, you can just go ahead and cut, In fact, that's probably going to give you the cleanest line when cutting it. So if I wanted to clean that up a little bit, I still could do that as I go through. And just clean that up. Of course, it's going to make a mess everywhere else, but it's going to clean up the edge. So you might want to do this. You can see, like, I have it over a paper bag here. You might want to do that over an area where you're not worried about getting little styrofoam bits and bobbles, because that's going to happen. Another thing that you might want to do, as you can see, this edge is now bright white, right? Just like the original styrofoam. So you might want to also paint that just like we did with the rest of it. But that, you guys can make that call on your own. So now that I've got it kind of the right size, what I'm going to do next is I am going to carve a line where I want the wall to be. So here's my area, right? I'm just gonna grab that wall and kind of like, do I want it way up here, back here? I tend to like the rule of thirds, if you've ever heard of it before. So if you imagine something's cut into threes, putting it either 1/3 or 2/3 of the way visually looks really good. So for me, I would either be putting the wall then like right here on the back third or way up here on the front third. I kind of think I like that back third better. So it'll be 2/3 in front and 1/3 behind. And I'm just going to take, now this is just a plain old color pencil. It could be any pencil though. Just need something that's a bit sharpened. And I'm just going to dig a line. You guys see that? Just kind of digging a line all the way across. Yep, it's going to make a little bit of a mess. So once again, if you've got a work area that it's okay to have a little bit of a mess in, that would be a good thing. So for right now, I'm just kind of carving some of that out. You can see I'm just scraping across. Nothing, there is no like fancy technique for this today. We are just scraping that out. Whoops. Went a little too crazy. I think my colored pencil was too sharp and I went too crazy there and my colored pencil broke a little bit. You can see it's not as sharp as it used to be. Once again, that's okay. So carving a little bit more out. Flinging styrofoam everywhere. It's like a meteor shower, but with styrofoam. It's kind of fun. Cleaning it might not be, but this part's fun. Alright. So now that I've got it roughly carved, I am going to take and see how that fits. It looks like I'm going to have to go more. I don't know if you guys can tell, but that is not quite far enough. So we go some more. And I probably need a little bit more on that side too. Okay, let's see. Let's see how this goes. Ooh. Almost. Let's see. Can I get that? Now I gotta be careful, right? I don't want to like all of a sudden be pushing so hard and then I break it. But I do think that's a pretty good fit. You'll kind of have to kind of, you know, wiggle it on in there. But so be firm but gentle, I guess, is going to be how I would explain what I'm doing here. I know sometimes it's hard to tell through video. So that's what we call a dry fit. So I fit it in there. It fit. There's no glue on it though, so it's a dry fit. If this bothers you, the fact that it's still white in there, you can paint that first. It doesn't really bother me because by the time my fence is in there, I don't see it. Right? I mean, maybe the tiniest bit, but for me, that's not going to bother me. So I'm not going to be, I'm not going to do anything. I'm not going to paint in there. But if it does, if that's something where you're like, I don't like seeing that white, Mrs. Stinson, paint that first, give it an hour or so to dry, and then we can move on to this next step that I'm about to show you. Next step, we're going to get out some liquid glue. So that was the dry fit. Now we're going to actually glue it on in there. So I'm going to take this and run a line. Now you can't see white on white, but it is there. It's coming out. It's there. And I'm just gonna do a nice thick amount. When I say like using glue, I'll usually say like only use a little bit when it's 2D objects, like paper on paper. You don't need a ton. When it's a 3D object like this, where it's going to be sticking out, we should use more than we normally would, because that's going to help it stay together. So now that the glue's all down in there, we're going to do our actual fit, like so. And we've got our wall up. Last step, we're going to get out those found objects. So I just went outside and I found some plants. Of course, these are going to dry, right? Like, they're not going to always look green and soft like this. They are going to dry, but that's okay. Or you could find twigs, something that's already dried, so you don't need to worry about it changing its look. But basically I'm just going to take, for anything that needs to stick down into it, I'm going to take my pencil or other sharp object like that and, you know, do that dry fit. Does that fit down in there? Yes, I want to actually cut that a little shorter, sticking up higher than I would want. And I might just give it a little bit lower there. There we go. And now that I did my dry fit, get that glue in there and stick that guy in. See how cute that's looking already? Do the same thing on the other side. I like to do like, you know, one plant-like thing on either corner. Dry fit looks good. And then I like to do a couple rocks at the base. I always think that that looks nice, but you guys choose. This is your art project. So choose whatever you think looks best. There we go. It's looking pretty good. Still, there's just styrofoam everywhere. It's like snowflakes. Okay, and then of course rocks too. These are also 3D. So I'm going to add, oops, my glue is running out now. A good amount of glue. I'm going to do 2 on one side, 1 rock on the other. So we're going to put this on that side, and 1, 2 over on this side. You're going to need to let this dry for a while. I'm going to try to tip it so you guys can see without the rock sliding all over. Okay. So I'm going to need to let that dry. The glue, especially like under the rocks and stuff, that's going to take a while for that to dry. So let that dry for a good couple hours before we photograph it. But then as soon as you are done, everything's been painted and added and all that fun stuff, that's when you're going to come back into our slides. Okay, and we are going to go to today's slide where it says Hall of Frame, and go ahead and just click on that. You maybe even already have it bookmarked or saved. It's also in our email, right? It's lots of places. But then we want to find your name, click on that, and then of course once you're in, I'm just going to find an empty one here. Once you're in your slide, there's a bunch of ways you can add the photos, but I think the easiest one is to come up here to where it says Insert Image, and then choose Camera. Now, you could also add it from your Google Drive if you put it in your Drive first. You could also email it to yourself and then download it. And like, there's a bunch of different ways, but the easiest one is to just use your Chromebook camera. And so that's choosing this here. It'll kind of gray out your screen. It'll have you, mine's not going to work, but it'll have you take the picture, and it will automatically load it right up in there, just like you're seeing with the rest of these as well. All right, so make sure you add it on into our Hall of Frame as well. And yes, you guys, I cannot wait to see how these turn out. I know they were looking so great in class, so keep up the good work, and show us what you got. I can't wait to see it. Have a great one, you guys. Bye.